They arrived at the stadium not as a rumor or a promise, but as an answer, a tidy punctuation to a season that began with questions and has, by October 2025, become a statement. Bayern Munich, under Vincent Kompany, no longer feel like the club that reacts to crises or recycles old glories. They feel like an organism that discovered a new operating system, precise, hungry, and unapologetically modern. The change is not a headline you read once. It's the kind of thing you notice in the small repeats, how they press in waves that look rehearsed, how their build-up finds half spaces before opponents realize the space ever existed, how the front three trade rolls the way a clock trades hands. Week after week, the same pattern writes itself. Control, squeeze, and then an attack that arrives like an inevitable punctuation mark. The first obvious piece is results. Bayern's start to this season reads like a machine primed for dominance. A run of wins that didn't flatten into routine, but instead intensified. 11 wins from 11 matches in all competitions is not a fluke. It's evidence of a cohesive plan. The club's board has read the same scoreboard, and more importantly, read the same deeper signs. Kompany's architecture is more than a restart, it's a refactoring. They extended his contract into 2029, not for sentiment, but because what he's building demands runway. That vote of confidence is one thing. The verification is something else entirely. A team that statistically controls possession more often than not, that posts a passing accuracy in the low 90s in key European fixtures, and that recovers the ball in dangerous zones with regularity. Opponents don't just lose to Bayern, they lose to the sequence of Bayern, the moment-to-moment decisions that arrive like a tide you can't fight. At the center of this machine sits a paradox: Harry Kane. He arrived in Germany carrying a career's worth of questions about trophies and fit. In Munich, he found a new language for his skill set. Kane hasn't simply kept scoring, he's evolved. He is as lethal inside the penalty box as any pure number 9, but he is also the team's most delicate creative fulcrum. He drops between the lines, pulls markers like magnets, and orchestrates channels for runners who know that when he drifts, the space behind him will be tidy and timed. The effect is devastating, because Kane is not just scoring from what others make for him, he is making the space others use. The numbers follow. A career-best goal rhythm at club level that reads like an avalanche, penalties struck with the calm of trained ritual, and a volume of touches that put him closer to a playmaker than a static finisher. But the real story isn't simply the goals per se, it is how his involvement changes the geometry of a match. Opposing center backs must choose track Kane into the second line and open space behind, or hold shape and invite him to turn and pull passes through the seams. Either choice fractures the defense. Kane's game under Kompany operates on the seam of intelligence and instinct. He times runs, so the moment a defender thinks they've read the situation, it is already too late. He'll receive in the pocket, shoulder the ball for one sharp touch, and then feed a runner or take a chance that feels, to viewers, like the reworking of what strikers can be. Yet even as he stretches the role, he brings the physical intensity of a modern forward, relentless pressing, the kind of off-the-ball work rate that forces a defensive line to hold its breath. He's both the composer and the muscle. That double nature is why he can lift a team that, talent aside, plays with a single strategic mind. Those attackers around Kane are not mere adjuncts. They are the other half of the sentence. On the left, there is a player who brings explosive unpredictability, a profile that eats space and forces defenders to collapse early, creating gaps that look accidental until you see them repeated. On the right, there is a different cadence, elegance, measured control, the kind of player who drifts into the half space and becomes a secondary creator. The pairing is intentionally asymmetric. One wing is kinetic, beating defenders one-on-one and throwing the structure out of shape. The other is posture, the calm line that converts chaos into clear chances. The team's balance emerges from that tension. Fury and restraint braided together. Depth is the other invisible quality. Bayern's attack has options without losing identity. A younger forward with darting runs offers a vertical outlet. Experienced wingers who can invert bring an arithmetic of choices into the half space. The so-called backup is not an afterthought, but an interchangeable puzzle piece who keeps opponents guessing. The idea that a top side can rotate its attacking components and still feel like a single organism is product design at an elite level. It makes the team hard to scout, because by the time analysts describe one pattern, Kompany has already offered another. But a football team is not only its front line. The midfield under Kompany has a dual personality that is both stabilizer and accelerant. Joshua Kimmich sits in the spine like a conductor with peripheral vision. He recovers possession and then, with minimal fuss, changes tempo. He can drop between the center backs to create a 5 at the back when the plan calls for it, or he can push the rhythm forward with angled line-breaking passes that make an opponent's midfield scramble. The complementary presence, a muscular, energetic partner who can win duels, arrive late into the box and act as a press breaker, gives the system its necessary counterpoint. One brain, one brawn. Balance without redundancy. The pivot's intelligence allows the rest to be daring. That daring is not reckless. It is licensed by a pivot who reads the lines and is willing to be the safety net. The defense and the goalkeeper form the other safety layer. Manuel Neuer, still impeccably composed, underpins the team's ability to press high with confidence. When a keeper can pass and remain calm in possession, the rest of the formation can lean forward without that old anxiety of exposed counters. The center-back pairing complements this approach, one aggressive on the step, the other steadier in line, together allowing the fullbacks to behave almost like wingers in attack while being ready to reconstitute behind them. The defensive structure is not static, it is an active part of the attack. When Bayern press, they do so as a unit that expects to win the ball in specific corridors, the ones most likely to yield a cross, a cutback, or a quick overload. Tactically, Kompany's fingerprint is flexibility. He has not chained the team to a single formation. Instead, he uses shape morphing as an offensive tool, a nominal 4-2-3-1 that occasionally becomes a 2-4-4 when fullbacks push and an advanced midfielder tucks in, or a 4-3-3 that compresses central channels and creates wide overloads. This fluidity is not an illusion of chaos. It is a disciplined choreography where players swap lanes with intention. The fullback's high positioning feels risky only to an observer who doesn't appreciate the timing. When Bayern invite pressure and then use the press to displace opponents, they create the transitional windows that their forwards read better than almost anyone. Kompany's team does not merely press to stifle. They press to manufacture the very scenarios in which their offensive intelligence thrives. There are nights when the collective works like a single mind. Breakdowns in opponent structure become predictable. A left back is locked into marking an inside forward. A pivot is hesitant to step, and the space behind opens like a seam. Bayern's movement is patient. They are indifferent to immediate glamour. They will circulate until the angle appears. When it does, they attack with a brutal efficiency that turns possession into goals. Possession alone is not the point. The point is the quality of that possession. Entries into the box, high-value half-space touches, passes into dangerous corridors. The team's possession is a surgical instrument, not a vanity metric. The Champions League has been the mirror where these qualities show in sharper relief. European fixtures leave less room for error because elite opponents can punish the smallest slippage. Bayern's performances there are not mere domestic dominance ported abroad. They are a confirmation that Kompany's model translates against top tactical opposition. They win duels, they win second balls, and they often win positional auctions because their press plan anticipates where the ball will be, not where it currently sits. That predictive press, the one that traps opponents into poor exits, has produced turnovers in the attacking third more frequently than rivals expected, and from those turnovers came the higher percentage chances that win knockout ties. Consider how this mastery shows in minutes of a single match. The first phase is a patient possession sequence, probing at angles. Next comes a micro-rotation, a wing that tucks to invite an overload on the opposite side. The opponent shifts, a gap appears at the edge of the box, Kane drifts to occupy the pocket, and a low-weight pass carves the space. Within 5 seconds, the team has transitioned from cautious to lethal. That is not improvisation, it's rehearsal. Those 5 seconds are honed in training, repeated until the player's brain prefers the right pass instinctively. The club's sports science and coaching are a backdrop to that repetition, but it is the player's hunger that makes the sequences feel inevitable. And yet there is nuance in the narrative. This is not a declamatory they conquer all propaganda. There are vulnerabilities that make the story complicated and human. A team that presses high and commits so many players forward must always manage the risk of counters, especially against teams with strikers who can carry and pivot quickly. Kompany mitigates this by choosing which opponents to invite into certain spaces and by training the side to recompact in a heartbeat. It's not perfect, and there are matches where the margin narrows and where tactical adaptation is required in real time. The best teams learn to adjust without panic. Kompany's Bayern have shown they can do that, but they remain testable. Great teams are defined not by being unbreakable, but by how they respond when broken. The human stories accelerate the tactical ones. Kane's evolution is a mosaic of decisions. A veteran refines his role, sacrificing lazy instincts for calculated bravery. The winger's burst is the art of youth harnessed by systems. The creative drifter becomes a utility player who can influence not just one game, but the arc of a season. At the back, the keeper's calm is a psychological anchor. In the middle, the pivot's intelligence gives everyone else permission to be adventurous. Together, they create a cultural magnet that attracts not only fans, but also young talent who want to play in this specific, purposeful style. You can see the club's ambition in other places. Recruitment is now surgical, not scattershot. Signings are not simply big names, they are players chosen for tactical fit and for personality alignment with company's vision. The academy is being fed by that clarity. Youngsters understand the model before they are promoted, which reduces the risk that a talented teenager will be miscast in an adult system. The club is building for seasons, not headlines. That is why the board's contract decision was consequential. It formalizes a plan and buys the manager the time to iterate. There is also the psychological effect on opponents. Teams facing Bayern do not only prepare for the stars, they prepare for the small decisions that compound into openings. Opponents try to avoid the traps Bayern set, and in the process, they often change their own identity. Managers will adapt game plans to be cautious, to retain a bit more structure, but that caution is itself a lesson Bayern may have intended. Force opponents to play below their best, then punish the moments when risk becomes inevitability. Long term, that kind of dominance bends the league's tactics. Others will copy the flexibility, the pressing triggers, the half-space exploitation, and the quality of recruitment. Competition will evolve, and Bayern will be the trend center, or at the very least, its accelerant. But the personal stakes remain. Football's calendar is relentless, and injuries can reframe narratives overnight. Managing workload, Kane's minutes, the younger winger's explosive sprints, the midfielder's muscular load is no small science. Company has shown an appetite for rotating his squad and protecting key muscles. He has also demonstrated the willingness to ask veterans to shoulder more in moments that matter. That balancing act is the unseen labor that dictates whether a good season becomes an all-time campaign. If the rest of Europe watches closely, it is not only for the spectacle, it's for the lessons that companies Bayern offer. Tactical clarity married to recruitment discipline, a creative core that trusts the pivot, a willingness to accept short-term risk in service of long-term dominance. The club's present look feels like it was assembled by both boldness and restraint, a paradox that, when executed well, becomes undeniable. In the small hours after a big win, the conversations inside the dressing room are not about proclamations. They are about details. Who made the right cover on a counter? Which midfielder timed the recovery? Which pass demanded the goalkeeper's involvement? Those micro-assertions are what turn a collection of star performers into a single instrument, and that instrument, right now, is playing in tune. What remains most striking is how quickly the idea of Bayern's identity has hardened. In the space of a single season, they have moved from a top side in transition to a team that looks like the reference point for elite modern football. Adaptable, press-ready, possession-skilled, and ruthlessly efficient in the attacking third. They don't just win, they win by controlling the story of the match, by forcing opponents into the denouement they prepared for. The club's numbers, possession dominance, passing accuracy, ball recoveries in the final third, support what the eye has already told the story of. A team functioning with mechanical precision and with an appetite that matches the schematic. The final truth is both simple and complicated. The best football teams are equal parts architecture and appetite. Companies Bayern are proof of that synthesis. Their structure allows risk, their hunger turns risk into rewards. The season's little moments, Kane's drop that creates a chance, a winger's inside movement that drags a fullback into a blind spot, a pivot's late arrival that finishes a sequence, are not isolated. They are repeated, practiced, and trusted. That is why opponents despair and why neutrals watch with a sense of inevitability. This chapter of Bayern's history is still being written. Contracts have been extended and trophies are already on the table, but the deeper story is about method. If the next months confirm what the early stretch suggests, this team will be remembered not only for the goals or the trophies, but for how it remade itself. From a club where the big name defined the plan, into a club where the plan magnified the big name. In the end, the thing that makes this Bayern both terrifying and beautiful is that it plays like a machine built to win, and yet, at its heart, it still beats with human intention, with players who decide, in tiny, repeated increments, to make the right play at the right time. That is what championships are made of, the accumulation of correct small choices night after night, until the scoreboard tells the simple truth.